Great. Next on stage is Girmantas Neniškis, a sports marketing professional with 20 years experience in event and media production, sports and sponsorship marketing development, social impact entrepreneurship. Girmantas recently was the head of marketing at Klaipėda ID and led the creation of Klaipėda city visual identity, navigating bureaucracy, public involvement, and the creative process. So, Klaipėda visual identity, navigating the legality of public design, and Girmantas Neniškis. A round of applause for Girmantas.
Thank you, everyone. It's great to see you here. We had two cases, artists creating something out of inspiration, an agency that was commissioned, and I will tell a story how it looks like from a city perspective, representing an agency that is running the tender and is organizing the process. So I'm not going to talk about design today, and if you like to know more about Klaipėda new identity, I bet you can do that, and you will find a lot of resources online. But when we are talking about a public design, we get to face the legality issue. What is the legal design? Is it only lawful, or does it have to be honest? Does it have to be accepted by the public? And where do we find that legality? So I would say we might have two different vectors. We can look at it from the bottom up. So basically, Alytus is the perfect case. We have quality design that was conceived within the public, but then it wouldn't have made it to that landmark if there was no public consensus, right? We had artists, we had influencers, we have the general public accepting that design and being ambassadors for it and putting pressure on the policymakers. And that's how the public mandate was created. Let me remind you, Barack Obama didn't support same-sex marriage until 51% of Americans did. Politicians aren't stupid. They're just mirror of our society. And they know very well what they need to represent. So before we have that public mandate, we cannot do anything else. On the other hand, you can go top to bottom. So that way, you have to have a political will, someone with a vision, someone in a position to have that legal mandate, whether an elected official or a hired professional. But then it is important to have transparent procedures, because if the procedures are not transparent, it's going to be hard to manage change. So Klaipėda, in fact, had a very different story around the same time like Alytus in 2018, where they commissioned an agency to create a visual identity. An agency did a great job, but then due to some untransparent procedures and processes, with some malicious agents involved along the way, the logo was leaked with the project price tag attached to it, and the shitstorm that followed in the media immediately killed an excellent piece of work. So when I joined Klaipėda ID with a mission to create a new visual identity for Klaipėda, nobody in Klaipėda wanted to touch the visual identity with a 10-foot pole. It was a poison fruit. So we had to build a process that will guarantee and deliver result. I didn't have 5 years. I understand that the artists, they enjoy the process and they can do it forever. I knew that my tenure in Klaipėda ID is 2 years maximum. So I had to build a process. How do we ensure that we can deliver the result? So what kind of process is this? Earlier this year, I was giving a presentation at Lithuanian Marketing Association. And Lithuanian marketing professionals on an interactive poll voted that it's 80% design and 20% political project. 0 respondents said that this was a legal project. My approach was slightly different. I realized that it's at least 60% legal because we have to create a paper trail leading to the highest possible, let's say, decision makers in a city. That would be a city council. And every single decision, every single piece of paper has to be linked to a higher one and a higher one and a higher one until we have a full chain that is unbeatable by any legal terms. Then, of course, there's politics involved, 30%, I would estimate, because you have to deal with politicians, you have to deal with the public, you have to educate them, and so on. And I will tell more about that later on. And only then, the last 10% is the cherry on top, the design. So, where do you start? To start, you have to know who's your audience. Your target audience for design is your city population, people. They are the first ambassadors for the sign. They will be proud to wear it on their chest and their caps and so on. Also, businesses. It's a business tool to present yourself better, to create a better image for the city, as well as for your own business. Tourists. Obviously, they want to visit a city that has a clear image rather than something shady. Investors, and we might add also talent. All the cities are facing the challenge of attracting workforce these days. So talent attraction is just as important. But the reality is that if we look not at the design, but at the process, that our target audience becomes the politicians, and all of them have their own agenda that does not necessarily align with the strategical documents and with the general public. Also, media is another big player and stakeholder. And the problem is, especially with regional media, they know nothing about design, they know nothing about visual identity. So we had to spend a lot of time educating what a visual identity is, why is it necessary for a city to have one, how do we save resources instead of spending and wasting resources, and how do we make sure that all these investments bring back the return. One of the most important group of people is actually the staff, the people that will help you throughout the process and that will use that visual identity once it's finished and let's say given away for the people, for the public to use. But then you cannot ignore the malicious actors. You have to identify them, and you have to know what are the tools that they will use, and how do you protect your process from it. So our key principles for our process was, first of all, power to the people. Democracy first. We said immediately, we're not doing this for the municipality. We're not doing this for the politicians. We're doing this for the city, for the people of Klaipėda city. Radical transparency is the only way to fight corruption and incompetence. If you speak openly about every decision you make, if you speak openly about your goals, if you explain openly, and if you drag those malicious actors into the light, they usually shrink and have nothing to add. And last but not least, freedom of creativity. Like Algirdas mentioned earlier today, Ukraine is currently fighting for their freedom, for the basic right to be true and honest to yourself. And everything we did at Klaipėda AD was to create a bubble that the creative partners critical XY agency, they could do their job having full freedom within their experience. So, as we moved into execution, we started with research and participation. So first stage was a contextual and analog analysis, which included all the relevant strategic documents, analyzing perspectives, analyzing Lithuanian and European city identities, Helsinki included. And then we moved on to a web survey that was an open question web survey that was answered by 1,367 respondents. While that number is not extremely high, Klaipėda has less than 150,000 inhabitants. So 1% of Klaipėda population answered an open survey and expressed how do they feel about the city. Also, it's important that we had multiple backgrounds and multiple, professions and social backgrounds and so on. On the third stage, we took a deeper dive into these communities, and we had creative workshops with culture, education, and sports sectors. We had a workshop with tourism and business sector, and we also had a workshop with city communities. Once all of that research was done, we created the urban narrative and the creative brief. So we defined what are the symbols of Klaipėda, what city features are defining the uniqueness of Klaipėda, what is the city vision and goals. But at this stage, we said this is enough of public inclusion. Because we wanted to have that creative freedom, for the next step, for the creative process, we had a group of experts. Some of them are here today, and I'm really happy to see them. And then we provided the brief to the agency to come back with a result. We didn't want to leave it to chance. And I think that's what separates amateurs from professionals. Amateurs might hit it out of the park once in a while, but professional will do it when he has to do it. And as I said, we didn't have time or resources to waste, and we needed to deliver the result. So our first stage in the creative process was generating ideas and prototypes. We provided feedback, and we picked the prototype we liked the most. Then what followed was design iterations. But before we could go to finalization, the reality hit. Why does it always happen that when you think that you have it in the bag and it's already going very well, something goes terribly wrong? What you're looking at is two signs of Klaipėda. So on my right-hand side is the sign that was designed for Klaipėda in 2018. That was followed with a PR storm and 3 or 4 lawsuits and so on. So nobody wanted to touch it. And it was the agency came up with this idea within their own process, with their own research and so on. But then 4 years later, we get another agency, another group of agencies, completely different process, completely different approach, completely different, let's say, idea and also concept. How do you explain this artwork? And they come up with this idea. And unfortunately, on this screen, I don't think there's enough contrast, but somewhere around here, there's a line where you can see that the color is actually different, but it's the same. So we had to go back to square one. And thanks to the critical agency and their designers, they found a way to anchor to the oldest symbol of Klaipėda and to create something fresh, but something that has undeniable link to the history of Klaipėda, and it has a right to be a symbol of the city. Because what both of these signs represent is the uniqueness of Klaipėda, that is a very multicultural city. It has a lot of different communities, but they don't interact between themselves. Klaipėda has a wonderful old town that has German architecture, which is uncommon for Lithuania, but nobody who moved to Klaipėda moved there for the old town. They moved to Klaipėda because of the seaside. Then again, someone living in the southern part of the city has zero interaction with someone living in the northern part of the city, and so on. So even though there is a lot of cultures within the city, they don't interact, and there's no single symbol that would unite them. So let's take a look at the final result. So the oldest symbol, the oldest city symbol in Lithuania, combined with the colorful metaphor that was defined by our urban narrative, breathing the regenerating energy of the sea, right? So last Friday, here in Kaunas, the design community decided to approve the design of Klaipėda identity with a silver award. So big congrats to the agencies for their hard work and their award. But then when you let yourself think once again that you have it in the bag, the reality hits again. And this time it's called immunity to change. So with the next slide, I cannot guarantee that right now it is accurate. But as of 2 days ago, when I was finalizing this presentation, Klaipėda Municipality official Facebook page was looking like that. So I'm no design expert. I will not criticize anything I see here. But when this sign was presented in spring or maybe winter, I was kind of skeptical reading the press release that this logo is so good that it will be presented, on the biggest stage of design. Little did I know that I was going to be the one to bring it there. But we took one step further. We anticipated that, and we knew that it's going to be the issue, and we knew that it's going to be another hurdle and another challenge that we have to face. So what you see right now is an artwork that I created within 45 seconds by using the Klaipėda visual identity generator that will allow you to create any art you want that will follow the brand rules of Klaipėda visual identity. So my only hope is that with these and other tools available, Klaipėda visual identity will become legal both within the public and the policymakers in the nearest future. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, quite some political struggles and policy struggles in making an identity of a city. Any questions for Girmantas? Yeah, straight away. Let's wait for the microphone to come.
Yeah, no, naturally, I do have a question, obviously.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Despite that, I would tell this story a bit different, but I want to ask the question about the ownership. How it is important in this context, ownership of the visual identity, and who owns it now.
So currently the owner is Klaipėda municipality. I might clarify that I was not an official employee of the municipality itself. The municipality has a public institution, Klaipėda ID, which is a city development agency. It was also a political and strategical move to export the tender out of the municipality to the public institutions, so we had slightly more wiggle room and more, let's say, power in our hands. But yeah, so regarding the ownership, I think officially the owner is the municipality, but we try to convey, the message that it's for everyone and everybody can use it. Everybody should use it. Everybody can use their own color palette, the one they like, the one that aligns with their brand image and so on. And we just created the rules, but it's up to the city to actually implement it and to transform into this vision that we presented them with.
And the city is not implementing it too much, as you saw.
Little by little. There's always, resistance, but some, as I mentioned before, like the staff is your key priority, because the staff of the culture department, the staff of, other institutions, they started working with it on the first day. Right after the presentation, we presented the visual identity on Tuesday, and on Friday the tourism center, they went to some conference and they were already preparing their presentations with the new visual identity brand book and so on. So it's like those people on the ground, they really enjoy it, they see the value in it, and they use it. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah. Isn't it a pity there is no line in a contract that it has to be implemented, the design, not only created? Is it possible legally?
Legally, it is possible, but it's when it goes to politicians, all the rules go out the window.
Okay.
And those lines between legal, lawful, and what's being done sometimes are really blurry.
Yeah, we see that. Any more questions about Klaipėda identity? Yes, so here, just a second until we wait for the microphone.
Aš atsiprašau lietuviškai. Jūs pats esat klaipėdietis, kaip supratau.
Ne.
Bet žinot, ar ten dirba savivaldybėj kažkokie komunikacijos specialistai, ar ten tiesiog palikta savivaliai, nes yra, pavyzdžiui, mažesniuose miestuose, tai būna, kad jų ir nebeturi. Tai gali būti, kad irgi ištinka tokie, ar čia dėl ko taip vyksta, kad, jūs įdeda daug darbo ir paskui, tiesiog tas visą tai prapuola.
So, is there no one responsible for communication from the municipality side?
Yeah, so basically the question was like, who is responsible within the municipality? Klaipėda, like me myself, I'm not from Klaipėda. I'm from Vilnius, but as I was presented, I'm a sports person. I surf, so that's why I moved to Klaipėda, so I could surf in the Baltic Sea.
Quite a common story nowadays.
Yes. So basically, that also provided me with some more, like tools, because I'm not local. I'm an outsider. I'm here just to do the job, to do it right, and to enable you to enjoy it. But then coming back to the municipality structure, it's a mess. Klaipėda does not have a marketing communication department at all. So as we were doing the visual identity tender and this entire creative process, parallelly we were working on creating that function within the city, whether that would be delegated to Klaipėda AD, whether several public institutions were combined to one agency that is responsible for tourism, business, attraction, and all the other marketing related activities, whether that should be a department within the municipality and so on. And unfortunately, exactly a year ago, I presented the municipality with a strategy and 3 solutions. How can we solve it? Until today, not much really happened because of the power struggles, because of some, let's say, political lack of will or just a political will. So it's a tricky situation, but that's why it was a really, really supercharged project, because all the risks that we had anticipated were there. Like we had to deal with every single one of those. So it was a challenge.
You can get to know more on House of Cards on Netflix. This explains everything.
Pretty much.
Sounds like that. Any more questions? I was wondering what was... we have a question. Yeah, let's move the microphone. And maybe we can ask later, what is the takeaway from this story for the students? I don't know if that works.
As we saw the logo, which was designed before with a key letter, so it looks like logo itself. And this modification is the newest one. Looks very similar to official coat of arms of Klaipėda city. Maybe there are some misunderstanding as mixing these signs between each other, as from one side is logo, and it's very similar to traditional coat of arms.
Excellent question, thank you. But this is the reason why it is like that, because otherwise Klaipėda does not have a symbol that could become a identity mark. As I mentioned, like we have the Meridian ship that's quite famous, parked like within the city center. But for me as a surfer, I don't care about it. I'm in Klaipėda for other reasons, and so on. So there's not a single symbol that would unite people, and then you're left with the letter K. And letter K might be Kaunas 2022. Letter K might be Klaipėda, might be Kėdainiai, might be another 50 towns within Lithuania alone. So also my topic was the legality of the design. So we had to create something that has the undeniable link to Klaipėda. And I would take another step and say that Klaipėda coat of arms is not original. It was redrawn based on the stamp that was created 770 years ago. So the logo doesn't originate from the coat of arms. the logo originates from the stamp. And they can go and live their own lives because on the official paper, on the diploma, for example, you will use the coat of arms. And it will have more power, it will have more status because it will not be used in everyday life. But then for someone to have a full cap for a 15-year-old, he will not wear a coat of arms, but he will use a colorful cap for his leisure. So I think these two are aligned pretty well.
Yeah. Great question. Yeah, a short follow-up.
Once more, as maybe the new logo is as complicated as the coat of arms is. For example, for some short understanding, for short quick communication, maybe key letter should be more useful. For example, Klaipėda has now a new building have a key letter form, and it's a very good visual identity sign of the city.
I understand and I agree with what you're saying. As I said, the old logo that was designed in 2018, you saw only the logo. The visual identity was based on the mirror effect that happens on the horizon. So that's why it was mirroring, like the letter, but then also all the symbols and all the, like typography, everything was mirrored along the horizon. So it was a really beautiful concept, but because of that PR nightmare that the sign went through, we just couldn't risk to have another letter K and risk another, like this public, let's say, discussion, whether it's right or not. So within our process, we decided that we have to step back. And once the designers came up with the idea to use that simplified symbol of the stamp, we said, like, let's leave the symbol as a small dot on the design, but let's focus on that breathing, colorful metaphor. So that was it.
Yeah, thank you. So let's leave it here since we have one more presentation before the lunch. So a round of applause for Girmantas, and not the happiest story so far. Hopefully it's going to get better.